in English. I'm your host, Annie Navarro. We have finished the 7 episodes on listening, where we taught you the various ways of teaching and testing listening. But listening is only one half of the oral communication process. For the next 7 episodes, we will look into the other half of the communication cycle. We will concentrate on speaking. In today's episode, we will focus on the nature of the communication process. Look at these people. What are they doing? They are communicating with each other, aren't they? Think of the kind of world we would have if people didn't speak with each other. We would have a world of silence. Actually, even if persons were speaking to each other, it doesn't mean that communication would take place. There are factors that affect communication. Let's find out what these are. But first, let's look at what and who are involved in the communication process. First, we would have a sender of the message. In the case of oral communication, it would be a speaker. The speaker would of course have something to say, and that would be his message. This message would be carried by sound waves and would be received by the listener. This is not all there is in the communication process, for there may be physical noise outside that would affect the communication process, or the listener may not be feeling well or may be emotionally upset, in which case the message sent or received would be distorted. What then would affect the communication process? Let's look at each of the items we said are involved in the communication process. Let's start with the speaker. For one thing, the speech sounds he makes would affect the message if he mispronounces the words. He may be misunderstood. Then, his choice of words would also affect his message. Were they comforting? How did he organize his ideas? Were they easy to follow? All of these would affect the message of the speaker. Well, what about the listener? What factors would affect how well he receives the message? To begin with, his knowledge of the language would definitely affect his understanding of the message. In addition, how the listener feels when he hears the message will also affect his reaction to what he hears. This is what we referred to earlier as noise. That is, internal or psychological noise. The attitude of the listener to the speaker would also affect how he picks up the message. If he is not interested in the speaker, more so in the topic talked about, then he is likely not to pick up the message. Communication breaks down. How often do we make our learners become aware of the roles and responsibilities the speaker and listener have in putting across messages? This episode will certainly give you techniques and strategies on how to make our learners communicate effectively. Specifically, the episode will talk about the nature of the communication process. Let's take a look at this communication model. What does it show? Well, this model is called SMCR, or Source, Message, Channel, and Receiver. Notice that the elements listed under Source, the speaker or sender, are the same elements listed under Receiver. Too often, people tend to forget that their ideas, which can result from their own knowledge and experience, do not match exactly with those of their listeners. Although, apparently, the elements under source and receiver are identical, The experience that the speaker has had with each of the items listed could be different from the receiver's experience. The speaker hopes to reach the receiver with a message through the use of the 5 senses. The content of the message may be treated by the source in a variety of ways in order to utilize the senses more effectively and to reach the receiver. Is the model complete without feedback? Certainly not. It is through feedback that people learn whether their ideas are accepted or rejected. Giving the appropriate feedback as well as reading it intelligently determines the success of communication. Let's consider the difference between bricks and ideas. In the process of communication, an exchange of some kind of information takes place between the source of the speaker and the listener or receiver. But people do not transfer messages as they would move sacks of rice and flour or even a pile of bricks. Instead, the source or the speaker expresses an idea, and in the process, he or she has no guarantee that the receiver understands or accepts the message. If the ideas were sacks of rice or bricks, they could be neatly transferred from one place to another. But ideas are different. They have to be heard, listened to, understood, responded to, for effective communication to take place. Let's try to look at this situation to concretize what I am saying.
Hey James, it's been a long time since I last saw you. Hey James, where have you been?
Why couldn't James respond to Carlos? Evidently, there was a barrier. The pair of earphones blocked communication. How important is feedback then? Receivers of passages should not be passive, because as they respond to ideas, they in turn influence the sender of the message. This interaction can modify or completely change the structure of the ideas. Even when the listener shows little outward response or maintains a certain kind of formal neutrality, he or she may actually be reacting coolly. The alert speaker will again realize the need to adapt and then proceed accordingly. We can therefore say that communication involves process, interaction, and feedback in the use of verbal and nonverbal means of expressing a message. That is to say, communication involves response. If no physical or mental response follows the sending of an idea, no communication occurs. Have you ever experienced communication breakdown in your own classroom? Let's talk more about that when we return. Welcome once again. Even before you tell me about your experiences, let me take you to a classroom where a teacher feels frustrated over her students not responding to her questions simply because of miscommunication.
Good morning, class.
Good morning, Mom.
Class, I would like you to look at the words written on the board. Can you read the words, please? Anna? Anna? Anna?
Ma'am, sorry, I wasn't listening.
Why couldn't Anna give any feedback? Obviously, she was focusing on something else and not on what was going on in the classroom. The chat between Anne and her classmates was a barrier to communication. Let's look at the second classroom situation.
Okay, let us begin our lesson for today. Class, I ask you to read the selection Dahong Palay for your homework. You remember? Let me see if you understood what you had read. Who can give me the theme of the story? Well, what is the whole story about? Who can summarize the story?
Why couldn't the teacher get any response from the students? I agree with you. The teacher failed to prepare the class for those difficult questions. She could have first asked the easier questions so that the students could have been guided to give the appropriate feedback. There was no match between the sender's message and the receiver's understanding of the message. There are many 100 reasons why people, teachers, and students alike fail to put across messages effectively. But before I give you a fuller discussion of these reasons, let me first tell you about the variety of situations in which humans use communication. Perhaps you have never thought about the fact that you talk to yourself inwardly before you produce the words aloud, or make some gesture that expresses your meaning. Let us look at this situation.
But as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Yes, I can do it. I won't forget my lines. I can do it.
Hey, what's this? Where did this cake come from? I wonder where Mr. Diaz is. Maybe he could help me.
What do the situations seem to suggest? Apparently, they seem to tell us that the basic level of communication enables people to think through what they want to say, to organize how they want to say something, and to plan whether to ignore, to accept, or counter an opposing idea. They think about what they will do in a certain situation and remember how they have reacted in a similar situation. This recall may prompt them to react in the same way or in some other way. How do we call this basic level of communication situation? We call it intrapersonal communication. In this type of communication, people actually talk to themselves silently. We see this in people who react calmly and objectively under stress. Actually, individuals who react calmly have perfected a system of intrapersonal communication. Their system enables them to first think rationally, that is, to talk things over with themselves, and then respond to the crisis. Although intrapersonal communication often takes place before other types or levels of communication, it may also occur during interpersonal or public communication. Is it possible for us to develop intrapersonal skills among our learners? Of course, it's possible. We'll tell you how after this break. Stay tuned. Let me go back to the question I raised earlier. Is it possible to teach intrapersonal communication among our learners? I would say we can. And to prove to you what I want to say, let me show you how a teacher does it in her class.
Good afternoon, boys and girls.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Okay, class, I know that all of you here have dreams in life. Okay? Right now, I would like you to think of them. Because in a little while, I will ask you to present your dreams to your classmates. As if no one was around you. As if you were thinking aloud. As if no one was there around you to listen to you. Okay? I will give you a few minutes to gather your thoughts. Well, is everyone ready? Can I see a show of hands? Okay. Juan Paolo?
Yes, ma'am, I have dreams in life. As a matter of fact, I have many. There are times when I want to become a medical doctor. A special one. I mean, I would like to become the doctor of the poor. But I don't think my parents could have to afford me to a medical school. Oh well, just forget it. I don't think I'll ever be one. What else do I want to be? You know, it's funny of how my classmates would laugh at me when they know my plans to become a mayor. Why not, Juan Paulo? Why not? You see, I believe that I could serve best my countrymen, especially the poor, by being one. Right, Mom?
Okay, very good. Did you like the activity? Did you see how the teacher utilized the task for Juan Paulo to show his intrapersonal skills? I'm sure there are other classroom activities your students can do to develop intrapersonal skills. Please refer to the TSM for these sample activities. What is the second situation in which people use communication? Why don't you watch this scene before you give me your answer?
Tom, were you able to do research work yesterday? I went to the library with Bill, but we couldn't find the documents we needed.
Which library did you go to?
The school library.
Why don't you try the National Library? I found some data today.
How many were talking in that communication situation? Yes, there were two, Tom and Fred. How do we call this type of communication when two or more people are interacting? Yes, we call this interpersonal communication, where people communicate directly with one or more individuals who receive messages. These people engage in a direct interchange, and together with their listeners, they establish meaning both parties actively participate in, sending and receiving messages. When you saw Tom and Fred talking by the window, you were looking at a dyad. A dyadic communication takes place between two people and provides for the most direct interchanges of messages. Through dialogue, the two communicators make frequent adjustments to each other in an interchange that fosters closer understanding. We can tell our students that when we visit a guidance counselor or when they stop to chat in the hall with a friend, to inquire about schoolwork or about an upcoming event in school, they can use dialogue, which is an essential mark of dyadic communication. Why don't you join me in the classroom and see some students talking about their prom while doing their assignment?
Hey, are you attending the prom next week, guys?
Why not? This is the event I have been waiting for.
And who is your lucky partner, Rex?
Well, she's a friend of mine in the neighborhood.
Yes, we still call it interpersonal, but this time it is interpersonal group communication. This occurs frequently in our daily life. It happens when people join in a conversation at the coffee shop, at the canteen, or elsewhere. Communication within a family and communication between and among teachers and students in and out of the classroom are good examples of interpersonal group communication. Effective communication in the group requires that all members share and participate. Is there a third kind of communication situation? We'll find out when we return. Welcome back. Yes, there is a third type of communication situation. But before we discuss that, why don't you watch this first?
To promote an effective partnership with the community, both where you are assigned and where you reside. The community as the main pillar.
What have you done for the list of my brethren? Do you have the answer? Thank you.
Ang pinakamahusay na game show as game show host.
How different are those situations from the earlier communication situation we showed you? Obviously, the people in the situation you have just seen were reaching a larger group or audience as receivers. This is what we call public communication. In this type of communication, a speaker addresses many people on a more important level, thus affecting the communicating behavior of both the speaker and the receiver. How different is this from intrapersonal and interpersonal types of communication? Public communication aims at reaching a larger group or audience. The speaker has a little idea about the kind of audience he or she is going to talk to. Listeners in public audiences seldom heckle, nor are likely to participate openly with their own messages, pro or con. Listeners give more subdued feedback, which take the form of applause or limited facial and body movements. Sometimes, even these few feedback cues are absent, as at large political rallies. A speaker sees only a blur of faces in the far boundaries of the crowd. The voice reaches the listeners through microphones. But the speaker, for example, on television or radio, may never hear or see their overt responses. The setting in public communication is more formal than in intrapersonal and interpersonal communication situations. Does public communication have a place in the classroom?
Thank you for making me your president. And I promise you that I will do my best. But we have to work as one.
I am sure you have engaged your students in such activities, especially when you ask them to present research reports, survey, or interview results and the like. Now that we have come to know the various types of communication situations, we are now ready to discuss the various reasons why people, teachers, and students alike fail to communicate effectively. I'd like you to watch this.
You know what I don't understand, Jack? I don't understand love.
Who does?
Explain love to me, Jack.
You can't explain love. I can recommend a novel, or a movie, or a song, or a poem, but I can't explain love.
Try, Jack. Try to explain love.
Well, say I happen to see this cute little girl walk by and
Why does she have to be cute, Jack? Huh? Can someone fall in love with a girl who isn't cute and has freckles and a big nose? Explain that, Jack!
Well, maybe you're right. Let's just say then that I happen to see this girl walk by who has a great big nose and...
I didn't say a great big nose, Jack!
You not only can't explain love, actually, you can't even talk about it.
That was funny, wasn't it? What seemed to be the problem? Well, the girl simply could not get what Jack was trying to tell her. He confused the girl with his different perception of love. Why do people seem to fail to communicate effectively? There are several barriers that block communication. Why don't you watch these situations and try to identify the communication barrier which thwarts or blocks communication?
Leza, do you have a sewing machine in your house?
What do you mean?
I mean like this.
Oh, you mean sewing machine.
Yes, sewer.
Why did Lisa fail to understand Cindy at the beginning of the conversation? You're correct. Cindy had regional pronunciation problems which are difficult to correct. Evidently, the barrier that blocked communication is language related. And in that situation, it was mispronunciation of the words that delayed the understanding of Cindy's message. Language barrier blocks communication. We expect our language to solve problems merely because we use what we think are the right words. Unfortunately, our listeners may have an entirely different thought or solution in mind, and our words do not mean the same thing to them. Words by themselves do not have meaning. Meaning depends upon the user. The meaning of words ultimately remains with the speaker, and he knows what he intended those to mean. Language barriers can occur in the following ways: mistaking connotative meanings for denotative, confusing one person's use of a term with our perception of the term, overgeneralizing, and taking words out of context. Let me crystallize these forms by watching the following communication situation.
John, aren't you taking the lift? I can hardly walk. What do you mean? I mean, will you make me walk without taking the lift? What is a lift, Danny?
What went wrong? We will know the answer to this after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. So, what went wrong in the previous situation? Danny used a word which was not part of John's vocabulary. Lift to Danny meant elevator. We should remember that words have denotative meanings and may also have connotative meanings. The denotative definitions include exact scientific descriptions of words. The denotative meaning for lift might read as follows. As verb, it means to carry, or it may mean elevator in the American context, or load, or rise, advance, and others. On the other hand, the connotative meaning of a word is one that is suggestive or implied, not the literal or scientific type of definition. Let's listen to the conversation between Mario and Marlon, where the two use a lot of connotative words.
Hey, Mario, did you watch the basketball game yesterday?
Oh, yes, I did. Did you notice Liston's towering height? He's as tall as a mountain, isn't he?
You can say that again. But I like the way he dribbles the ball. His hands are faster than his leg movements.
He's really a fantastic player, Marlon.
I agree with you.
Did you enjoy listening to the words used by Mario and Marlon? I'm sure they knew what they were talking about. Have you ever thought of finding out whether your students can differentiate between denotative and connotative meanings? Let's find out how a teacher does it with her students.
Okay, class. Today, we shall talk about something that everyone likes to talk about. Love. Okay. I would like you to think about the words that immediately come into your mind when you hear the word love. Okay, I will give you a few minutes to gather your thoughts. Okay, is everybody ready?
Yes, Mom.
Okay, give me the words. Henry?
Mom, Rose.
Rose. Rose. Aurora?
Painting, Mom.
Painting. Pamela?
Valentine's Day, Mom.
Valentine's Day. Very good.
Carlos and chocolates.
Carlos and chocolates. Naya, thanks.
Expensive and problematic.
Expensive and problematic. Okay.
Did you notice how diverse the answers of the students were? Perhaps you can also try that simple experiment. Ask your class to write down the first 5 words that come to their minds when they hear the words like mother, father, marriage, rose, freedom. You will be amazed at the diversity of the responses. This experiment simply tells them that meanings are in them and not in words. Sometimes we fail to realize these limitations, and then we respond to words as if they were an absolute thing. This response can become a barrier to communication. Another language-related problem which either thwarts or blocks communication is overgeneralization. Overgeneralizing happens when important details are left out in a communication situation. When we generalize from too few examples, or from examples that are not typical, problems can develop. Take this example.
Martin, please buy me a bottle of alcohol on your way home from the office.
Okay. I have to go now.
Oh, Martin, you're here now. Did you buy the bottle of alcohol I told you about this morning?
Oh, yes, I did. Oh, here it is.
Oh, no, not this one. I said the natured alcohol.
I don't think you said that.
What was Mrs. Santos's fault? She overgeneralized. She failed to use details or give specifications to put across her message effectively. One thing to remember, though, it is impractical to avoid generalizing altogether. Often, generalizing serves an important function of facilitating communication. But we should tell our students to guard against using it incorrectly. Other language barriers can result from taking meanings out of context. Let's listen to what Mark is saying.
It was a great movie. Well, if you want to be bored for 2 hours, then watch it.
What do you say about that? Would it be dishonest just to repeat that Mark said it was a great movie? Such dishonesty or sarcasm not only interferes with communication, but also causes the communicator to lose credibility as a source. And the loss of credibility is likely to interfere with future communication. So far, we have taken up communication barriers which are related to language. Are there also barriers that occur between people? We'll give you the answer to the question when we return. Welcome back. What are the barriers within people? First, there are differences in personality. Certain psychological factors in personality make it impossible or very difficult for some people to communicate. In our study of a group of males, it was found that even under the best communication circumstances, persuasion was unlikely to happen when individuals who showed certain personality traits, those who outwardly displayed hostility toward other people, or who tended to withdraw and remain aloof when less likely to be persuaded. Also hard to persuade were the males who had a low self-esteem, those who seemed shy and lacking in self-confidence. It was easiest to persuade individuals who prized group conformity and wanted very much to adapt to the social environment. There are likewise personality conflicts that affect communication. If a listener dislikes the speaker, or vice versa, little communication takes place. Both sender and receiver try harder to catch the mistakes and overstatements of the other than they try to comprehend the other's ideas. Another barrier to communication within people is in terms of delivery. Take a look at this speech situation.
I am a Filipino. In my blood runs the immortal seed of heroes. the seed that flowered down the centuries in deeds of courage and defiance. In my veins yet pulses the same hot blood that sent Lapu-Lapu to battle against.
I am a Filipino. In my blood runs the immortal seed of heroes, the seed that flowered down the centuries in deeds of courage and defiance.
The blood runs the immortal seed of heroes, the seed that flowered down the centuries in deeds of courage and defiance. In my veins yet pulses the same hot blood that sent Lapu-Lapu to battle against the first invader of this.
I am a Filipino. In my blood runs the immortal seed of heroes, the seed that flowered.
How can those situations affect communication? Delivery is one feature to consider in the process of communication. If the message is either too loud or too soft, too rambling or too disorganized, the audience will find it difficult to pay attention. Speaking too slowly or too rapidly do irritate listeners, thereby affecting the entire communication process. The other category of barriers exists in the setting of communication situation. Let's say the room is too large, or the group is too big for the venue, or the place is not properly ventilated. Communication suffers. Too much noise or too much light interferes with efficient communication, as do too many interruptions. Let's make a recap of what we have talked about. What are the 4 barriers to communication? They are language barriers, psychological barriers or barriers within people, barriers related to delivery, and barriers in situations. Did you enjoy our first episode on speaking? I hope that you were able to gather insights into how communication operates as a process. With greater awareness of the nature of the communication, your students can more effectively do their part to bridge the so-called communication gap. We can tell our students that they have the responsibility to become as proficient as possible in communication, so that they become part of the solution and not part of the problem. As skilled communicators, they have the power to maintain and improve society. Let's summarize what we have taken up in this episode. We said that effective communication involves process, interaction, and feedback. We also said that feedback is a very significant feature of effective communication. There are 3 types of oral communication: intrapersonal, interpersonal, and public communication. There are barriers to communication, and they are language barriers, barriers related to delivery, barriers within people, and barriers in situation. In the next episode, we shall talk about the critical sounds of English and the features of speech, such as pitch, stress, and juncture. Goodbye for now. This is Annie Navarro saying, happy teaching!